Today, we're looking at Colorverse Schrodinger. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Colorverse Schrodinger is a green ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Lamy All-Star with a 1.1 stub to take my notes for this video. Now, before we go to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. A true mixing green as a child. Yellow and blue makes green. A very nice golden yellow. Not a bright highlighter yellow, but a golden yellow. And a very bright blue used to make this ink. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And really unusual that it's flipped. Normally when we see yellows in these inks, they wind up at the top of the chromatographies, and both of these are at the bottom. But even more unusual is on the dry one. The line across the bottom is the yellow ink. Can't recall that it's the yellow that's been the holdout color. Very odd. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself incredibly well. That extra fine is still an extra fine. It's not blown out, blurry, fuzzy at all. Very safe for a note-taking situation. Now, water is only lifting the blue out truly because we have a lot of the yellow still there and some of the green. So it's not getting all of the blue, and it's certainly not moving the yellow. Pen flush is only moving the blue away. That yellow is absolutely there and absolutely in place. I don't think that pen flush is going to do it, and it gets even scarier because the 1/3 bleach solution did not take the yellow off the paper. That yellow is still very much there and not budging. It is a very permanent aspect to this ink. This means test it in an inexpensive pen before you go put it into one of your expensive pens, because even though it's yellow and it's very light, it looks like you stand a chance of a little bit of staining. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Colorverse Schrodinger has a viscosity of 2.27, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Colorverse Schrodinger has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal. And if both viscosity and dry time fall into the same place in the bell curve, which is always interesting to me when they're in the same location in the data. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in bottle form, and I want to say I got this before I could get it as a sample. So I wound up getting the bottles. It's still a little overpriced. Yeah. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and it's got some really interesting shading that's happening. Hoping my camera's going to hold out because sometimes it has trouble with some of the greens. Like in Colorverse, it starts dark, it gets to a mid-tone, gets super dark, and then it goes into a mid-tone, very light, super dark. Beautiful shading up here. Same thing with Schrodinger. The top of the D is very light, the beginning of the N is very light, but the rest is very dark as a word. Extra fine is a much lighter tone than the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It offers some very nice shading. Like the H, E in the is much darker than the T. The left side of the Q is darker than the rest of quick, and then at the CK it gets super dark. Brown starts dark and gets light. Beautiful like this all over. Like the word over, very light, and it shades ever so slightly all the way to super dark. Beautiful. And 11 seconds to dry. The medium is a slightly lighter tone than the extra fine. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it offers beautiful shading. Very light to dark to mid-tone. Very dark to mid-tone to dark to very light between the C and the K. Super dark on the K. Or in the B and brown, the left side and the top of the B are light, but the bottom loop is very dark. The rest of brown is a nice mid-tone. Very nice, very beautiful shading. Over, again, starts light and works its way all the way dark. 15 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us a lot of color variation. We get a lot of color variation. The smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, some ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. It's a very dark tone. The medium is it's quite noticeably lighter, but it's still dark, but it's a very noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. The medium is a much lighter tone than we see with the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and I don't see any shading here. 26 seconds to dry. I think the colors this ink is giving are beautiful. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we got none, and you normally don't get that on Tomoe River. The smear test, I do not think you could recover it, and you normally can't recover them on Tomoe River. Rhodia. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and I'm not seeing any of the shading up here. The shading we know this ink can give, but it is not giving it. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and beautiful shading. The quick, it's very dark to mid-tone to super dark at the eye all the way through. Brown starts dark and comes down to mid-tone. Fox starts very light and works its way very dark. The is a very, very dark word. Much darker than the word over right next to it. It took 12 seconds to dry. Now medium is a slightly lighter tone than the extra fine. Medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it has beautiful shading. Quick starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Brown starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Fox goes from light to dark. The starts from very light, gets very dark. Lazy. It has very light, very dark at the bottom of the L, lighter at the top of the L, and it's just great because the top of the A is lighter than the bottom of the A. The Z, the top of the Z is lighter than the bottom of the Z. It is beautiful, especially in that word lazy. Yeah, strange. Lazy, it was not. 15 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show plenty of color variation, and we got plenty of color variation in the writing sample. And a smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Now because the chromatography said this is definitely a blue and a yellow mix, which is what green is, I was curious what happens when I put a yellow tone background. So yellow Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting, which is what we expect. It's still Rhodia paper. Now when we look at the tones, the 1.1 gets slightly lighter from white to yellow. The extra fine, it's the same tone, but it looks more vibrant on yellow background, and the medium is certainly lighter than it was on the white paper. But what does it do to some of that performance to have some of the yellow background? So the 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading. Very dark green there. The extra fine, a noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and we lose the shading for using yellow paper. It's one of the reasons that I like doing this, and I realize how repetitive it can seem that it's a Rhodia and a Rhodia, and the only difference is the color. But this is the reason that I actually do it, because I do write on yellow paper, and it's nice to know what goes on with that. So that shade's lost. 12 seconds to dry. Medium. Again, a little bit lighter than the extra fine. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and we lost the shading here again. So the yellow has made the shading go away for this ink, but it's still a beautiful ink. I think it's amazing. Like that extra fine, very vibrant on this yellow paper. The medium took 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both here showed us no color variation. But look at that. Here, plenty. Here, none. All for a different tone background. And the smear test, you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. So white lines paper. And this is strange. This is really very strange because the 1.1 we get a lot of bleed spots. The extra fine we get a lot of bleed spots. Medium, not so much. Medium's very recover. You know, you could use the back of the page with the medium, no problem. Extra fine, viewer choice. Definitely not with the 1.1. So as far as bleed spots, it does not touch the page underneath. It makes the page unusable on the back if you're using this extra fine or the 1.1, but not the medium. And that makes no sense. But that's how it is. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading whatsoever. The extra fine is the exact same tone as the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 2 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone as the extra fine and the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading, 3 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it. In the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Schrodinger, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page, and I wanted something dark because this is a darker, but it's got some brightness to it. Green. I wanted a nice darker blue-black. I chose Diamine Eclipse. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Colorverse Schrodinger? I have to start by the worry of that yellow that wasn't moving out. Really make sure that you test this with your inexpensive pens. That being said, the color is absolutely brilliant. It shades well. This is a very pleasant green to look at. It does stand out in a very nice way. I do enjoy it, even though it is a bit overpriced. Thanks for watching.